Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, Tommy Morris here, your host on DetroitCity.tv, and we are live from the Chevrolet Detroit Grand Prix presented by Lear, and a phenomenal weekend of racing here. And, not only do we have the local media here, of course, us as the biggest local media here in Detroit, but we also have international media from all around the world. And I'm with the two gentlemen here that are from one of those entities, Image Sports Marketing, and they are in charge of really the overseas aspects for IndyCar. And I'm here with Carlo Garcia and with Willy Herrmann. And gentlemen, thank you for being here from Detroit. And Carlo, I'll start with you. What's your view of the city so far, and with the streets of downtown Detroit here?
Well, it's not my first time in Detroit. We were here several times for the Belle Isle race. That was a wonderful venue, but this is the new uh, going back to the past, right? Because this is where the Formula One used to race
Mhm.
many years ago. So I think this is a rebirth, and it's very proper because Mr. Penske did. Who's behind this project in order to enhance and boost the Motown, the Motor Town. I think it's a very courageous and very great effort that he is putting into the city. So we are very pleased to be here.
Is there anything that particularly with you, Willie, that had stuck out in your visit here? I mean, any changes since year to year, it seems that in the city and the new things that are happening here, have you found anything that you've seen different from your last year's visit? Is there something that particular sticks out in your mind?
Yes, Tony. I think uh, moving the race from Belle Isle back to downtown brings a totally new dimension for the race, not only for the local community, but also for the international viewers, for the destination exposure. We are no longer showing an island or environment that could be everywhere, but now we are showing real Detroit.
Yeah, it's incredible with all the people here from. I mean, this is a worldwide event here in Detroit. This is our largest. This is the showcase our city in Detroit here, and with Image Sports Marketing and your gentleman's position with IndyCar. Can you describe a little bit about how you gentlemen met and what Image Sports Marketing, how it became involved with IndyCar?
Well, we met so long ago that I probably I'm starting to forget. Not that I want. No, we've known each other for um, well over 40 years. We had worked briefly together at some time during the late 80s. Then going into the 90s, we put together this partnership, and we put together a Formula One team in 1994, a team that raced 95 and 96. And then we joined. Willy was already with IndyCar, or rather with CART, before in since 1984, and we joined the newly formed IndyCar series, or the IRL back then, as it was called. But before we move any further, and linking what Willie said, that this uh, coming downtown is a different gives a different dimension. I must thank you and your son for putting at our disposal today a
Can you
boat.
introduce us? I've never met him. No,
Oh,
I'm kidding.
you,
I'm
oh,
not. I'm not-
you did, right? Yes, briefly, a few years ago, but and you put at our disposal a boat because we wanted to shoot an image or a video of the skyline of Detroit, because uh, one thing is showing Detroit from within, and what we wanted to show it from afar, and therefore our opening broadcast today in Brazil is going to be with something that you allowed us to shoot, and we thank you so much for that. So you're a great ambassador for Detroit. Thank you for all your help.
Uh, that's really humbling, and that's what this event here, this worldwide event, is all about. In more ways than one, you're bringing multiple communities, multiple cultures under one sporting event that is an outreach for other people viewing worldwide. And I assume that when you gentlemen had gotten together, that was what the thought was behind Image Sports Marketing.
Uh, yes, in fact, when I started, got involved with IndyCar in '84, when I was here with Emerson Fittipaldi, that was one of the first foreigner drivers that came. The international interest started to grow about the IndyCar series, and at that point, it was more racing as really the marketing around the destination promotion that motor racing became today. Uh, Monaco is known worldwide because of that Grand Prix. Otherwise, much less people would know about Monaco and obviously about Indianapolis or about Long Beach. So basically, we came in a moment of transition. Not only the technology starting, you are too young to know probably, from a U-matic
Thank you.
cassette to the digital media,
Yes.
but it was a huge transition also on the marketing side, where those events became a relevant part of the city promotion globally.
And to touch on that, as you mentioned Indianapolis, and speaking with you earlier in the week, uh, Carlo, you had mentioned that when you were in Dubai, for an example,
I was in Saudi
oh,
Arabia.
Saudi Arabia,
In
okay,
Saudi Arabia, in the
yeah,
desert in Saudi, in 1977. And it was the end of the month of May, and I wanted to know the results, the result of the Indy 500. And I asked a Bedouin if he had a shortwave radio. Back in those days, that was the only way to get or try to get some news, which we didn't get. But I got something, a glimpse of something even more interesting, because I asked him, and he said, "Why do you want a radio?" I said, "Because I want to know the result of Indianapolis." And this Bedouin said to me, "Is that the race that goes like this?" In 1977, a Bedouin in the Saudi Arabian desert knew what Indianapolis was. And this is one of the things that made me lean on the side of Indy when it split, when the series split between kart and Indy, because here is uh, Indianapolis is the race capital of the world. Even though I'm Italian and I would love to say that is Monza, but it's not. And we are here with IndyCar. So it's very thrilling after all these years that I follow, because I started following IndyCar, or the Indianapolis 500, in 1961 when AJ Foyt won his first race. I was 11 back then. I was in Brazil, and news would get in those days, would take a magazine would take to get there three months. The car and driver would get 3 months by ship to get to us. So, and I learned my first words in English reading Car and Driver.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And speaking of Brazil, Brazilian driver Tony Kanaan, he hasn't moved. He hasn't said much, Tony, but he is here around Detroit. Him and his wife are correspondents
Yes,
for the sport in a
indeed.
good way, so they are around here. You know, with between now and people, when they speak of open wheel racing, there has been comparisons where, of course, between F1, Formula One now, and what is now IndyCar. Uh, Have you seen a transition or maybe a more of a move? I know that IndyCar, it seems like they've been attracting more Formula One drivers recently. Do you see a transition from that coming to IndyCar?
Yes, I believe that in the future we will see much more interaction between IndyCar and Formula One drivers, even though those are two different sports. Formula One is all about technology and is fantastic, but IndyCar is about competitivity, it's about a show, about entertainment. So both recipes are fantastic. And obviously, for most of the drivers, winning the Triple Crown, that is 24 Hours of Le Mans, the Monaco Grand Prix, and the Indy 500,
Mm.
is the ultimate goal.
Yeah, yeah. That is
And only one driver has achieved that in history. It happens to be Graham Hill,
Hmm.
who was Formula One champion in 1962, and then again in '68, and then won Le Mans and won Indy in 1967. So
and you
66.
Carlo, you have described dates already. You gentlemen have the eternal youth going for you, look, but you have discussed dates earlier. So I want to ask a question regarding the drivers in the past, and you have touched on a little bit, Willie, about the technology aspect of it. Uh, does the even though the technology has changed, is the driver's vantage point is how the driver prepares or the style of driving has that changed now with technology?
Um, it changed a little bit, especially in Formula One, where the drivers get far much more support from their teams, different from what we have here in IndyCar, where the driver sitting in his cockpit really has to do much more, has to know much more about the car. So I would say that IndyCar is not only more competitive, but in a certain way, it's more challenging for the driver because information that in other series the driver may get from his team on the radio, he has to figure it out himself.
So I mean, you would assume that that's probably would maybe be the ultimate thing for any league is to have sort of a parity where there's not necessarily one team that has an advantage, whether it's budget or a team that everybody is trying to go for a
You,
parity.
you see, basically, the big difference is between Formula One and IndyCar is that in IndyCar, there's always somebody breathing down your neck. Uh, and in Formula One, as we've seen this year, in out of 430 laps that the races until today, Grand Prix of Spain, uh, only 16 laps were led by a car that was not a Red Bull out of 430 laps. So, what fun is that for somebody? It's a very great technical exercise. The superiority of Red Bull is fantastic. However, for if you go watch a race, it's a procession, and the driver, well, he's there and driving until the flag. Here, there's never a dull moment. Never a dull moment. It's breathing down your neck and you trying to breathe down somebody else's neck until from the beginning to the end. There are last year in the whole Formula One championship, there were less passes than we had in the Texas race this year in the whole championship. So we're talking about two different animals. Our series for the spectator is a lot more fun.
And that is part of image marketing services. Um, I mean, one thing that is incredible about that, and for how the experience that you gentlemen bring to the sport, I'm sure that right now that is an advantage for you over any other entity. Is just the experience brought with past racing for both of you, both of your backgrounds. Is that fair to say?
Yes, Tommy, I think it is a combination from knowing a little bit about everything. You know, uh, we know about the satellite, about streaming, about camera position, about your business in television, but we also know the driver side, the team side. We know where the interests may not be converging, and we are the ambassadors to make this work.
Do you gentlemen? Oh, I'm sorry.
We are also we know marketing, we know finance, we know management. We organized races. We brought ethanol, sugarcane ethanol, uh, to fuel the series in the past. Now, in the series is run on renewable fuel that is produced in Brazil. So I think we bring our work experiences to the table, and they are multifaceted. And we try to put the puzzle. You know, we probably put the puzzle together slightly faster than others because we know all these other tricks of the
Right
trade.
on.
You know.
And, speaking of racing and earliers, Carlo, you had mentioned prior. Um, what would your mother think as a racer, and back in her day? What would she say today regarding all the technology and exactly the things that you are facing today that has evolved over the years?
Well, my mother raced. She raced in Brazil in times when women did not race. But the day I tried to race, she tried to dissuade me from doing it, and I had to race under an alias because so that she couldn't find out. But she was a person that was projected into the future, so much so that the mayor of Sao Paulo, Brazil, put her ahead of rebuilding, restructuring the circuit of Interlagos, where the Brazilian Grand Prix takes place, and she totally transformed it. She was the person that took the first guardrail factory to Brazil. Before my mother did that, cars would roll down cliffs, you know,
Yeah,
uh,
that's
and off berms. So my mother would be very comfortable seeing this new technology being introduced. But she would be also be very critical of certain things that happened in all forms of motor racing. She was very pro safety, and so I think she would be okay. She would love to be still alive because people that like technology, they they don't mind if where the technology goes as long as it progresses.
if I mentioned to you quickly for both of you, and you could say it at the same time, right? I would say, give me the most memorable driver to you comes to mind right now.
For me, more than
Let me
one.
say it once.
But Senna, Jochen Rindt, uh, and oh, difficult to say a third
All right,
because
you
there are
lost it.
many.
I think the best driver ever still have to come.
Oh, that's very diplomatic.
Yeah.
Well, of course, with marketing service, you have to be
Yeah, you
diplomatic
see,
in that, right?
but I would say Fangio as well as the third driver. But I'd never forget Mario. I could never forget AJ and the first year of Indianapolis. The race was a race of dirigibles. So people were attracted even back then to something that beyond the sea, there were no roads to get to Indianapolis. It was 1911, and yet they came from Italy, from France, from Germany, not from England the first year.
Yeah. Now, the ultimate would be, I would think, in any marketing, as far as for any driver and image, you would want to have more than one or two. I would assume you would want to have the whole race, have everybody with equal fan base. And so when looking at that, the future of drivers coming up, is there somebody maybe in particular that you say, well, this looks like a pretty good face at this time? Is that how that works? Well, with what you're doing right now?
Yes, we work for the series for IndyCar. Obviously, our job is to bring talents from Latin America, but certainly Kyle Kirkwood, American, is a fantastic talent in the very beginning. Colton Herta has still a lot to show. And on our Latin side, obviously, we have Pato Ward from Mexico. We have Alex Palou from Spain. Uh, that
Canapino
We have Canapino from Argentina
that just joined
uh,
the series.
that came probably from a different environment. They didn't grow up here in America or involved with the American racing scenario. They came from abroad. They had to learn the ovals, or still have to, and but they came attracted by the importance of what IndyCar is today.
And speaking of the heritage part of that aspect and tying it all into America here where we're at, in Detroit area, or maybe not just specifically in the Detroit area, but other areas around the United States that may have a richer heritage behind a Brazilian driver or a particular driver. How important is that to combine those two aspects of the sport?
Well, it's very important, for instance, if a driver comes to America, uh, and I'm speaking of foreign drivers, that the first few years he stays in Indianapolis or in Charlotte, uh, which are race centers, because otherwise they will be looked at by the team, by their mechanics, as spoiled brats or playboys, which is not what you want. Then eventually they will move out to the east or the west coast because life is comfortable, is nicer. But in the beginning, you have to breathe from morning to the moment you go to sleep. You have to breathe the air of motor racing, and there's nothing like being in Indianapolis to, to learn that. Because it's it's what you say, it's what you listen, how you go about this. Your mindset gets changed by living in that environment, and that is very important.
And final, gentlemen, with image marketing services, um, your goal for the future, as far as for how to bring everything together, can you discuss a little bit about that for bringing that what you're going to do in the future?
Yeah, I think something we are learning, we started to learn this year, is that our Latin Spanish speaking community that we started be in touch in Latin America is also very present in America. And our intention is to develop more and more our Spanish speaking and Portuguese speaking social media platforms in order not to reach only people in their native countries, but also around the world, especially here in America. Basically, in our days with social media, there are no longer geographic borders. The borders now are the language. So basically, when we have a product, a content in Spanish. It doesn't matter if you are in Argentina or in China or in Detroit. You will be following your language content.
Would you like to add upon that?
Yes, I think it's very important what Willie said about the language borderlines, because we cater mostly to those languages. But it was a big surprise to see that uh, in America people were following us, and so we now think that we have to increase that push into America and talk to the community. So we are going to be visiting the venues where we are going to race next year, and we are going to be talking to the communities, to the business Latino communities, the cultural, educational communities, so as to uh, make inroads into those communities and make them approach IndyCar, understand IndyCar, and I would love to see a young Latino from America racing in IndyCar in a few years, because this would mean that our communication was right on target.
Well, gentlemen, welcome again to Detroit. I am so thrilled to have met both of you. It's been such a pleasure. I appreciate the time that you spend here in Detroit, what you do for IndyCar Latino and really the international community overseas and image sports marketing. On behalf of Detroit City TV here, we're thrilled that you're here and that you're able to visit our city and bring that culture, that speed, that sexiness, that fast, fun-filled all culture and wrap it all into one with what we do here. So thank you for your time. We have Carlo Garcia, we have Willy, Herrmann, and
I would like
Oh.
to thank you, Tommy, and all your team, starting from Sarah, Krista, Zach, and Tara, and of course Justin,
Sarah.
and Sarah that was with us yesterday, and that started this whole movement. So now, thank you so much. You guys are great, and one thing has changed in Detroit. We saw a very enthusiastic feeling in the 3 days that we were here. Maybe it's the border is around the racetrack, but the vibration, the thrill, people are thrilled, people are enthusiastic, and I think this is very, very positive, because you needed the Detroit needed this injection of self-trust and encouragement. So
Thank you.
keep on.
Thank you very much, man.
They need people like you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Tommy
you so
Morris
much.
from Detroit City TV. Check out IndyCar Racing all the rest of the summer, boys and girls. We are out from Detroit.